Welcome to another episode of Threads of Enlightenment. As usual, I always want to take the time to express my gratitude to our guests, for I know they are coming with several things that I deem very important. The first is their time. It is a precious commodity by which we are able to exchange and have interaction with. And so I am very mindful of the expense that is within that. And I want to say thank you, Deborah, for sharing some of that. The other is your journey. I know it houses much pain, much insight, victories, defeats, all of those things. But I want to thank you that you're able to come and share it with us so that we can learn and become better human spirits. Thank you so much for coming to Threads of Enlightenment.
Welcome. I'm privileged to be here. Thank you.
It is an honor. We are excited. Talk to us, Dr. Miller, about some things that you have given birth today, which we call our creation. Talk to me about some of those children that you have given birth to, as far as what you do, your books, and all these other
things. Thank you. Yes, I'm Dr. Deborah Miller. I'm a licensed professional counselor in Pennsylvania and Missouri, United States. And after 25 years of private practice and work in universities and work in public schools, I tended to gravitate to not only helping children dealing with family issues and self-concept, but the latter part of my career has been more about couples and helping them to heal. And so in my private practice, I found myself working a lot with couples trying to recover from extramarital affairs. And I found myself repeating myself a lot and feeling a bit stuck. So out of that work came my book, which is More Than Sorry. I don't know if this is video or not. 5 Steps to Deepen Your Apology After You Have Committed Infidelity. And it's a very specific book because I found that when people came in pain to counseling, the person that was most hurt, usually the person that was the victim of the affair or the bystander, the wounded person, they needed to vent, of course, and share their pain and ask the question why. And the person that sinned, the person that violated the trust, betrayal, fell silent, felt inadequate to express their remorse, if they had any at the time. And so I felt like the work was really stagnated in the sense that it was one-sided. And not to diminish the need for the person who was to have support and have the time to talk and ask questions that they have. But I felt like there was also a need to equalize the balance in order to heal the relationship. So that has been my primary focus, is trying to talk about this work, which is rooted a lot in spirituality, in about forgiveness, in about self-understanding and courage to explore and be curious as to why the individual who cheated, stepped over the line. Because innately, we are all very defensive of our and poor decisions, and therefore we are more likely to minimize, deflect, avoid looking at it. And so this is hopefully a gentle nudging for them to, or not maybe gentle, more of a moderate nudging, to look at themselves and ask themselves some hard questions in order to say, I'm sorry, in a different way.
Yeah, I'm actually excited about getting into some of that later on in our conversation. But I want to talk to you, Dr. Miller, about your upbringing. What was that like? Because here at Threads of Enlightenment, we like to take the journey because our goal is to celebrate the journey and how you walk through yours to become the woman that you are today. So talk to us about your upbringing. How was that in the formulation of this young girl, Deborah, as she's a part of this family, brought from the hospital here at home with our family? And how did you, how was that, I call a lab? How was your family, that lab? And how did you manage yourself within that?
Well, my story of origin is a really nice one. I came from a very balanced Christian home that was loving and consistent, and I felt a lot of privilege in my upbringing. I'd always thought that I was headed towards writing and got a little discouraged at some point and moved more into education. Probably a lot motivated by, I do have a nephew that was mentally disabled and recognized the need for some assistance. So I became a special education teacher and working a lot with behavior disordered teenagers, which then led to drug alcohol prevention work in schools. And then from there, after I got my doctorate, moving into the university setting. So it was very, I'm just really grateful. I really haven't personally had horrific struggles, but I've always felt a lot of empathy and curiosity about other people and recognized the power of connecting and providing safe spaces for people.
You had mentioned earlier in the conversation about you wanted to be a writer but didn't. How old were you, Dr. Miller, that you perceived that, and how did it come about that you wanted to do that?
I don't know where I remember in 5th grade, that was my declaration. I was to become a journalist. And that was my trajectory until I hit freshman year in college and got a C in my freshman English class. And I thought, I guess I can't write. And it just took that one little bit of piece of feedback, which was silly because, of course, after that, my grades were great. But, somehow I got the message maybe from my mom that if you're going to be a good mother, you have to be a teacher. And so that was kind of, okay. I didn't have a strong mentor at that moment, and it just seemed the best route.
Yeah. And how, after taking that advice, what did it do to you? Because as a young person, as an individual, as an entity, when you hear that type of direction where you had a dream, as they say, how did you interpret that information from your mom? And you said, go the other route. How did that reside in your spirit?
At that time in my life, I'm not sure how introspective I was. At the time, I was like, okay, I'll go there. I remember sitting in some of my elementary education classes thinking, this really isn't a great match. But then I, again, tripped over a great mentor who got me more involved with mental health and working with students who were struggling. And that was a better match than me teaching.
Yeah. And that came about, as you said, one of your nephews, who had some challenges, and that also sparked you in that direction.
Yes, I was very much aware then of special education and how to, type of school that would help him be successful, and just participating in his life through his adulthood, helping him be independent and but also not be so isolated, which is really a struggle. Again, back to the necessity of connection and the importance, power of connecting with people and being supported.
Yeah. So here you are. I can see why you picked that from a profession, as they say, because I've interviewed several people, and many of them said because of a family member, something that drove them, especially into the medical field, to dealing with psychology and all of the different parts of healing, because they had a first-hand experience, as they say. So here's this young woman, Doc. There's this young Deborah woman moving through life. She begins her study in school. How did you manage yourself in school? What were the things that began to form this young woman's view of the world, and your relationship with others based as this young lady in her schooling, learning about herself?
You can tell you are a spiritual man. These are deep questions. Yes. Again, I'm not sure how much my introspection, my self-awareness was back then. I was, when I reflect on it now, I realize I'm so grateful for friendships and my connections to people. That carried me through, and I was a fun seeker. I love to have fun. And that was, luckily that all came out all right. And
we made it through, some of us, we made it through. We're still alive, and here we are to tell the tale, right? That's how I look at it.
I mean, I have one friend who loves me, who says, boy, Dad, when something bad goes wrong in your life, please let me know. I mean, I just haven't had any horrific challenges.
Yeah.
We moved a lot. My husband had a long career with the company that moved us around the United States a little bit. And that
Mm-hmm.
was always challenging to start again and reconnect with new people and find my niche in new communities. That was always a challenge. And
Yeah. And how was that? You said it was a challenge. Yeah. But how was the challenge? Again, you mentioned briefly reconnecting. And when you say that, it has a lot of connotation to it. One of stepping beyond journey, the newness of your environment, the fact that you had to get beyond all of these different new relationships. So there's a lot packed within that. Talk to me about how did you unpack the newness of all the moving and all of that? How did you unpack that, Dr. Miller, and how did it affect you?
yeah. Well, each move I had an adjustment. I said the first move took a year to be happy. The second move took 6 months to be happy. The next move
Mm-hmm.
took 3 months to be happy. I mean, each time I got
Yeah.
better at it.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe my own maturity, maybe it's technology and the fact that we can stay connected with people in the
Yeah.
city. But I certainly learned that starting over, beginning
Mm-hmm.
again,
Yeah.
even though I had my core family with me and a lot of things were still in place, there took a lot of acceptance of pain, a lot of acceptance
Yeah.
of grief,
Mm-hmm.
how to be sad, how to be, just okay and not great, and just normalize that in a sense because
Mm-hmm.
I had to go through that process, feeling like I fit in or feeling like I had a base of community in my new
Yeah.
living situation.
Yeah. That is, as you normalize that, as you said, and you're moving through and making all the adjustments, and being in a space where, because of your husband, you're moving over all over. How did you manage your educational piece as you're doing all of these different movements? How was that, and how did you maintain that?
Well, I guess I discovered I really love learning. So when I think back now, as you asked, each town I moved to, I went back and had to get some classes to get different certifications or bump up whatever state requirements was there for
Yeah.
teaching or counseling.
Mm-hmm.
And that was a great, way to make me feel some self pride, some
Yeah.
motivation, some purpose. So that was an anchor in each city that I lived in, was taking a
Yeah.
few university classes or pursuing the next certification or degree.
Yeah.
Kind of my go-to.
Yeah. So it was as you said, your go-to. The reason why I'm asking this question because these are the things that they may be simple, but they form us internally. We make internal, if you will, statements. I'm going to do this because of that. And the next thing you know, we manifest those things. We take the stages. You mentioned yours is learning, and it pushed you towards that to obtain all of these different certifications and so forth. Now, as you are obtaining all of these certifications, Dr. Miller, when did you, after your graduation, how long did it take before you got into, quote unquote, like a practice situation where you're then able to see your patients, and how did you, that newness of that, how did it help form you?
Well, I became as I got especially after I got the doctorate. That was
Yeah.
comical how much status that brings from others.
Yeah.
You can easily, yeah, that's interesting. And so, even though I knew my skills were the same, I mean, it
Mm-hmm.
was interesting to be valued and pursued. And so, yeah, as I watched my career and my clients continue to walk through my door in private practice, it took though the journey of being a teacher, of being a school administrator, of being a school counselor in a sense, and then the university professor. That all that shaped my skills, and then the power of I took a Gestalt class for like 3 years while I was running my private practice.
Mm-hmm.
And it was so good to continue to get feedback on who I was individually, but also how I was as a practitioner.
Yeah.
And, it took, it's really hard to self-analyze. It's very hard to
Mm-hmm.
self-analyze independently. So it's really helpful to have someone else's reflection give you clarity as to where you're headed and what you need. And so, for example, this book, 5 years in the writing. I mean, it was just kind of one of those things it became a joke in my family. Oh yeah, she's gonna write a book, and COVID weirdly gave me the time and space to do that. And I was ready to put it down and stumbled over the right. That's what's so interesting about the universe. I stumbled over the right people to hold my hand and nudge and give me insight and education as to how to complete that project. So that was really fun to
I think
have
COVID came to because of folks like you, Dr. Miller, because I believe, and I've heard I've interviewed hundreds of people, and I hear the same story about COVID. COVID, I believe we called it in. And I hate to say that because there were lots of us who were pregnant with things that needed to give birth. Had it not happened because of the busyness of living, we probably would have aborted some of those babies that were residing within us. But because of COVID, it gave us the time to reflect into and it is interesting how even though we were home, we were able to make the connections of all the people that was necessary for you to give birth to that baby that you had, that you were carrying, that your family were laughing about. And so, because of that COVID, I know lots of businesses were giving birth. People's dreams began to change from they unhooked by millions from corporate America. They are seeing the shortage of that realization now due to all these people making different choices based on the information that we got. And they began to see their value versus, how they were treated within the corporate America state. So here you are with your practice and you've gotten someone that you said is assisting with your digging a little. Talk to me about some of those things as they were self-reflection you said is difficult. As you began to look into you, talk to me about some of those things that you discovered that were there that you thought, I didn't know.
Okay. I guess the polarities, I can be really energetic and I can be a slug. I can be really empathetic and connected. I can be disinterested. I just kind of, again, the humanization of my polarities, but to also highlight them so that I learn them. For me to be conscious, my ability to be, my vulnerability to being influenced by others. I have to make sure I stop and say, what do I need? What do I want? Not saying yes right away, learning how to process any requests from people and not just gut react. And honestly, I'm not, I'm still working on that. I'm still not like that.
So, where did you think you got that, as you said, that duality? Did you think you got it from the fact that you were moving so much where you had to connect, disconnect, connect, disconnect? Do you think it came from there or maybe from another location, from another incident as far as you,
my
the
duality?
individual?
You were asking about my dualities?
Yes.
I think the key for me is accepting my dualities. So we all are, we're ands. We are energetic and we're lazy. We are, intelligent and we're dumb at times. So accepting that and integrating my polarities is the challenge. How to be both, and how honestly, and I've always had this pretty good because it was modeled in my family. How to not take myself so seriously. How to be able to laugh at myself. Find the comedy in my idiosyncrasies is really helpful. Really authentic. I feel like I'm more authentic when I can laugh at myself.
I think it is healing in much ways, and it takes, for me, I will say something in the middle of the day, and I will stop and say, "Ken, that was very funny," and I'll crack myself up, So I have those moments where I just laugh and laugh and laugh at myself, really. But my mind is forever moving and running. I have to learn how to rest it and put a state of rest, and that's where, for me, meditation helps me to do that and helps me to maintain through the day. So talk to me about, as you begin to as you learn about this woman, Dr. Miller, of who you are, what were some of those things as you began to look into yourself um, introspectively that you discovered that, hey, wow, I didn't know that was a part of me. And from that perception of yourself caused I want to say, a point of view that a less than thinking of yourself, and how did you overcome that? Because a lot of us have these tendency of thinking that we are less than in something, and we have to learn how to navigate through that. What was yours, and how did you walk through it?
Well, of course, the tendency is always to compare myself to others, as we all do as humans, and certainly with maturity and confidence in myself as it builds, I can take feedback from others and look at how I'm different from others and wonder if I could
Yeah,
maybe be a little more like that other person.
yeah,
But I feel that I am still enthusiastic about growing, and I know that my curiosity about myself as well as in others, it just gives me the blessings of very wide ranges of interests and
hmm,
different types of people in my life, and I'm so grateful for that. And
yeah, yeah,
trying not to judge, and that's sometimes easier not to judge others than it is to judge myself. But there's that balance.
yeah,
You want to be honest with yourself, yet at the same time not be so down on yourself. You have to determine
yeah.
if it's fair criticism.
Yeah, the purpose of the negative thoughts, and I try to, when they do arrive, because they do arrive, you're human beings, and the thought will come. And I always say to people that the power that happens to you when you begin to live is that you begin to choose the thoughts that you allow in. But most of us sometimes, because we do not live in a state of awareness, as I mentioned before, we just take that thought and run with it. And a perfect example is when I was called to teach within the prison system, and I told these guys that were, I mean, some of the biggest guys I ever saw in my life. And I stood before them in my suit and coming from corporate America, and I'm looking at them and I said, all of you are here because you couldn't control your thoughts. And they were looking at me like I was absolutely out of my mind. And so when I began to expound on what I said, they understood, and they came to me and began to understand the importance of addressing the thought, asking the question, why are you here? What is your purpose? And so forth. And once you are able to make those decisions, then you will make a choice that no longer based on someone influences and advice, but on your own terms, which will then begin to create the outcome that you desire. As you grew in your practice, Tom, and you began to have all of these different entities that are coming before you, what were some of those threads that you began to notice within your study? First, let's deal with those that were of the adolescents and so forth, and then we'll move to the couples, because I know you probably saw some threads within that as well. What were some of those threads in human development that you began to notice and pinpoint that you can talk to that to our listeners?
Well, regardless of age, the threads, people rarely get the opportunity to be heard,
Mm-hmm.
and that there's a lot of growth that can happen from connecting with a person who respects them, who accepts them, doesn't necessarily have to condone their behaviors, but just is curious about them. And so what I
Yeah.
saw with teenagers was that if they trusted me, if they felt like they really could talk openly, they had
Mm-hmm.
a lot of clarity that would come, and expiration and relief. The
Yeah.
secrets that we carry are so exhausting, and
Yeah.
to be able to just share them and say them out loud is truly positive. It just helps remove some blocks from moving on and
Yeah.
becoming willing to try new adventures. So I certainly saw that with teenagers, and certainly with adults, and certainly with couples, was the necessity of safe space, and the necessity of saying things out loud, how important
Mm-hmm.
it is for personal growth.
Yeah. Talk to us now, because I know I wanted to get to this part of it because I know quite a few couples that are dealing with this issue of infidelity, and I love your title, More Than Sorry. How important that work is, especially even with the onset of COVID. It kind of opened many people to their partner and how they think, and because they were constrained to be in this one space,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
it gave birth to a lot of hidden things that were there that were brought out within their relationship. So talk to us and give us some insight as to this particular energetic development that manifests before you when you have a family coming before you, and both are in pain, but from different point of view. And how
Mhm.
do you manage that encounter?
Yeah. Yeah, you're right. Both people that are trying to repair their relationship after infidelity are coming in pain. They both share fears and regret and hurt.
Hmm.
And it's very, so as a therapist, I can validate all those feelings and help them say out loud what they're internalizing. And that's what I hope they learn is how can they
Yeah.
truly express empathy for each other.
Hmm.
And it is a skill. It doesn't necessarily come easy. We tend to really want to say our yes buts, our defensive mode when confronted, like, how dare you? You want to
Yeah.
kind
Yeah.
of put up your fists and say something back.
Hmm.
But to learn the skill of how to say, wow, you're really angry at me because I cheated on you. Wow, you're
Yeah.
really not trusting that we can ever be a couple again because, the violations and the hurt that you've inflicted on me. I mean, those empathetic statements are door openers for
Hmm.
intimacy. And, when I talk about intimacy in my book and with clients, we tend to think of physical intimacy, but there's so much more. It's
Yeah.
emotional intimacy, being able to say out loud your thoughts and feelings. It's experiential intimacy, be able to share fun things together and common interests. Spiritual intimacy, be able to share
Yeah.
your belief systems and practices. And so it's learning how, by being curious and authentic, that we can hopefully connect with others at a deeper level. But again, just like my story about moving and accepting the time frame that it takes to be happy, there's a
Hmm.
time frame about recovery from betrayal,
Yeah.
and it's that's the thing to coach the cheater about, is that the forgiveness may not ever happen, but it certainly isn't going to happen over.
Yeah. Time
You
is
have to.
a
This is a lifelong
yeah.
journey you're on. If you stay with this couple, and even stay as a couple, or even if you don't, there's a lifelong journey of reflecting on your past sins and transgressions, and being free enough to talk about it in a way that says, "Today, when I think about what I did, this is how I feel," and that your reflections of your transgressions are going to change with time.
Hmm.
Your apology is going to change with time. And so, but to not, pursue it, not to not talk about it,
Yeah.
is like the elephant in the living room. We're all tiptoeing, we know it's there, and it just needs to be said out loud.
Yeah. I
And that's
think
tough because a lot of people aren't extroverts. A
yeah.
lot of people internalize their thoughts.
Yeah.
It's hard for them to say things out loud.
Yeah. We're not programmed to do that. Many of us. We're programmed to put the emotions aside, and if someone is a little too sensitive, oh, you're too sensitive, you need to change that. Oh, you have culturally within the men that it's not man enough to show your emotions, which it is absolutely the opposite. It's you're more man enough to show your emotions. And so, yeah,
Yeah.
we have to do a lot of unprogramming. And I see where you are sitting within that volatile emotional volcano, bringing all of these principles and recognizing them, and then stripping them apart to get this couple to now become naked before each other, and naked in every way. I'm not talking physical nakedness. We're talking about naked, and to be there is, wow, what a vulnerable place for all to be. And then from there, as you said, it is going to be time. Because I came out, in my family, we had to deal with something like that. My parents are both passed, but that was an issue. And I remember as a young man having to deal, because I was the eldest of the children, having to deal with that with my parents to try to, I was always in the middle. So it was interesting to see some of that. And so that's why I wanted to gravitate here so we can maybe have some conversation to help some folks that are in this space. So talk to us, Doc, because I know the nakedness part you mentioned briefly about bringing those individuals to the nakedness. That is a powerful place for a man and a woman to be. But how did you, how do you get them there, Doc?
Yeah.
You know?
Well, they have to be willing. I
Yeah.
laugh because I'm guessing my book is usually purchased by the person that was cheated on,
Yeah.
in hopes of giving it to their significant other, that they would read it. I mean, most people are, again, our defensiveness, our inclination is to protect our ego. And so we're going to avoid looking deeply at
Yeah.
what we've done wrong. So it is kind of I usually start with couples and give a little orientation, like, this is how this is going to work, and this is why we need to do this. And certainly for the person that cheated, they need to come in individually, because there's so much
Yeah.
they need to say out loud, that isn't really healthy for their partner to hear.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
they have to learn how to talk about it at some level,
Yeah.
Yeah.
I got a chance to, as I mentioned, to witness some of that. So I get what you see on a daily basis, or even to walk that family through. And the understanding of the purpose of time is very important, especially in a situation like that. And how do you manage that is by managing one's expectation within the time limit. And so that's another thing that you have. What type of, and again, this is based on personality, and sometimes when it comes to the expectation, these different personalities react this way. How do you manage that conversation, Doc, about the expectation within this healing process now? Because if it's not lined up, it can really still destroy this whole thing that is going on there if they don't learn how to manage that expectation. How do you guide someone or a couple within that space right there?
Well, it has to come from a place of hope, because, when a couple comes in and the person that cheated is going to feel pretty ganged up on and beat up on. And so for them to have some hope that change can happen, transformation can happen, intimacy can happen, is really necessary. And that both parties need to hear that. Both parties need, because so much of our culture is placed in a shame game on this. As I'm not saying we should approve it, but, so much of extramarital affairs, or online affairs, actually, is a big thing now, are never brought to light. And so there's certainly a discomfort in talking about this openly with friends and family because of the game of the judgment. And so that's why it's so powerful to seek a professional that can be neutral and help them grow from their mistakes. And that the point of it, the fact that you can change, things can be different.
Yeah. I always tell people, because I was a pastor and I had to counsel a lot of couples, and I would tell them the importance of being naked with each other. And again, it's not a physical nakedness. I'm talking about in everything, the dark places, in expressing, giving the ability for someone to express exactly what's on their mind. And you have that, both of you have to be, how should I say it, have to be able to allow them to make that expression. And if they are not able to be allowed to make that expression, then is when they begin to cover themselves. And before you know it, you are in a relationship somewhere outside because of that, not having that space by which you can be naked. And I tell them, when you are there, you're absolutely 100% vulnerable. You cannot judge each other. You just have to learn to accept each other's pure nakedness. He or she may say something or want something that may have you a little uneasy, but they're being naked. You need to be able to have those conversations. And so, yeah, this marriage thing and this relationship thing is really a powerful piece. So, here you are, you're doing these things, and I know that is needed now that COVID has shown up and these things have been identified. And you said a lot of the online relationship, the emotional relationships and cheating that they have going on now. You have your the 5 steps. Can you give us briefly, I know not to go into it, but how did you come up with those steps, and where did it originated from? Where did you put it together, as if you will, as you saw all of these different lives before you?
Well, the 5 steps came honestly from the book. The advice I was given was people need concrete, like, here's the 5 things you can do to be happy. And of course, in the end, it's like, do these 5 things over and over and over again. It's not going to be a bunch of things and done. But as I worked through, the things about, I kept calling it navel gazing, how to look inward, how to ask yourself deep questions, how to get feedback, explore. But I realized that out of it first has to be this skill of empathy. We were talking about nakedness with other people. It's sadly our culture is so critical of emotion. That we should be rational. You should think this through. You should not lose be moody or be angry or be sad. You should be happy. And so there's this challenge to learn how to sit with someone's intense emotions, how to validate them, and how to connect. And that is intimacy. But then the other challenge is, how do you know your own emotions? Because again, we are able to push things away and talk ourselves out of things. So I start with empathy as step 1. And then step 2 is about navel gazing, or taking a good inventory of yourself. And 3 is making amends. And the last step is, I skipped a step tonight, asking for forgiveness. It's challenging because, we want to just say, I'm sorry, and right? I won't do it again. Okay, we're done, right? No, you have to figure out how to say I'm sorry in a way that reflects that you have empathy and understanding of your own self a little deeper, and recognition of what restitution goals you need to set as your hope to become a better person.
That I'm sorry thing people say so quickly and don't understand that what they're saying sorry about. And sometimes when I would stop them and ask, okay, what are you sorry about? And they will just go about the act. But what caused the act? The act was manifested somewhere, it was a mental thing. What caused it? And so when you bring them back to that kind of conversation, then it would slow them down a little and have them, as you said, make them look into their situation to understand what that means when you say that.
Right. Yeah, there's 2 parts to the apology. One is saying, I'm sorry how I've hurt you, and acknowledging how deeply you've hurt them, and acknowledging where the other person's at emotionally and physically, because, we have somatic issues where whatever pain we're feeling may come out in our body, relationship. The other piece of an apology is saying, here's what I've learned about myself. Here's what I know I did wrong. Here's what I intend to do differently. And that's the piece I think we leave out when we say, I'm sorry.
Yeah, those that are listening to us, everyone is listening to us. And I know Doc had mentioned it earlier, but More Than Sorry is her book. And this is Dr. Deborah Miller that we're talking to. And she has produced this. She has given birth to it to assist those couples that have been hurt through infidelity and all of the different things that, as far as the relationships are being damaged. She's here to help you guys, all of you that have relationships, even before it gets damaged. Get into her space, buy her book, learn principles so that you can identify things before they manifest, so that you can be able to steer your family and your relationship from falling over that abyss, as they say. Doc, I want to thank you so much for coming to Threads of Enlightenment. This has been good. And all of you, we're going to provide all of her stuff so that you can reach her. I need you to get in there because, as I said, I know quite a few people that are going through this particular thing. And actually, I'm going to do my best to pick up a couple of copies so that I can offer it to them to help. But I want to thank you so much, Don, for coming to Threads of Enlightenment.
Let me tell people how they can easily make a link to my book, and it's through my website, which is www.drdebmiller.com. DR as in Dr. Deb, D-E-B.
Yeah, we're going to provide all of that information as well, and so that they can get to you. I know that you have your email and stuff, so we're going to provide all the links so that those that can purchase your book and want to talk to you and guidance and all of those different things, that you're there for them. And thank you so much, Tom.
Thank you, Ken.
You're welcome.
Really a pleasure. Have a beautiful day.
You too.